Hey guys, it's Casey Cole Corbin, and I have a special guest that I want to introduce you guys to. I have been considering podcasting, and maybe you have considered podcasting too. Some people podcast just because they want to share about their hobbies, their interests, they're bored in COVID, whatever. Other people use podcasting as a really great way to connect with customers for their business. And so I have met Caleigh Bell. I'm going to bring her on, and so everybody say hi to Caleigh.
Hi.
Yeah, all right. And guys, if you will, if you're watching live, I'd love to see that. And so if you would please comment, hey, Casey, I'm here. Even if I know that it's lunch hour, and so some people are going to be kind of in and out. But and then if you're watching in replay, I'd love for you to say, hey, I'm in replay. So go ahead and make a comment. I have this streaming to several different groups and pages of mine, and my YouTube channel. And unfortunately, my dashboard doesn't show everybody who's responding. So I promise you that if you are typing, a question or something, and I'm not ignoring you, I promise. So good. Caleigh, tell us about yourself. What do you do, and how did you get into doing this?
So I am a podcast manager and launch specialist. So I handle everything from starting a podcast to continuing the management, to booking guests, editing, everything that goes into a podcast. I got started, I initially started working as a general VA, and several of my clients had podcasts. So I started working with them on editing, managing, promoting their podcast, and fell in love with it and switched over and niched down and started doing that full time.
Wow. That's so cool. And so if I understand things right, for over a year now, you have been helping other people do exactly like what I've been curious about doing. Do I need to podcast? What's the pros and cons? How do I podcast? And that's how do you help people in that way?
So we start off by launching the podcast, and launching the podcast involves recording a couple of episodes, usually about 3, recording your intro and outro, editing all of that, putting it all together through an editing software, and then uploading it onto a host platform. So that's where we first get started. Prior to that, you have to decide on the mission of your podcast, what your goal is, what kind of content you want to provide. So I also offer helping people decide on what the core goal of their podcast is. And then
what are the goals that people have whenever they get onto a podcast? Why do they do this?
So usually it's to share their message and promote a product or a service. Podcasting is a great way to share your message with people without them having to block extra time out of their day. So if somebody's going to log on to watch a YouTube video, it's hard to watch a YouTube video and drive your kids to karate lessons or drive them to school or do the dishes or clean the house or work on other things. So podcasting is a great way, especially if your clientele is busy people. It's a great way for them to be able to absorb your content without having to block out extra time for you.
Well,
so it just makes it easier for them.
I have kind of a funny story this morning. Well, actually, just a few minutes ago before we got on here, I was listening to a podcast I really enjoy. I have to close the name because I'm terrible. With the online course guy, Nate Dodson, who's a microgreen farmer, was being interviewed there, and he's this hippie jippy guy, out there, and these other guys are being interviewed by these business people. It was a wonderful contrast and really, really entertaining. And we had, normally I'd listen to a podcast on my phone and then put in some wireless, earbuds, and then I'm just running around the house, because right now I've got 3 kids at home doing virtual learning. Right. So I'm going into rooms, checking on them, and stuff but today I just had my laptop. So I'm running around the house holding this laptop going up and down stairs. So I didn't do the convenient thing that you just said there.
Right.
But I do find I like podcasts a lot because there's no expectation to stop and look at a screen. Because I'll do the same thing with YouTube shows like you did. But every once in a while they're like, and if you see here, and I'm like, crap, and I got to set things down. Yeah. So that I get a lot of information from podcasts. That's great.
Yeah.
How did you get initially hooked? I mean, what was your draw?
Yeah. So I have never purchased anything from anybody online without first binging their podcast.
Okay.
And so that's the click moment for me where I was like, this is the future, because it just builds that know, like, and trust factor so much quicker. People are committing to putting you in their, their earbuds every week and listening to you. They're building that relationship with you without you really putting in, like, it's not one-on-one necessarily. Like, you're not putting in that one-on-one effort, but for them, it feels one-on-one. It feels so individualized. They look forward every Tuesday morning to waking up and you having a new episode out. So you become part of their life in that way. And it really just promotes people to buy because they feel like they personally know you. And so it's just, a really impactful way to share your message and get your content out.
I totally agree with you. I am not an early adopter. I don't, I have to wait and sit on things. I make no decisions very quickly. We always, my wife and I always joke about, that we have to sleep on everything before we make a decision. And sometimes I sleep a year. So, one of my main mentors is Matt Tommy. And, I was part of his free group for, with podcasts. And I've actually been a guest on his podcast a couple of times before I joined his membership program. But I had to do that. And there's I just watched a launch, Jeff Walker's launch program 2 weeks ago. And it's all about about getting people into this free, challenge and then getting them to buy and having a deadline, and there's something that just doesn't sit well with me about that concept, about having, this closed door and now you can never get in, again.
Right.
There's another guy I started following that I wish I could recall his name. And he talks about a slow growth and how you can make a lot more money if people stay with you, right?
Right.
For 24, 36 months before they buy. And I think that podcasting is a great way to do that.
Yeah. It's also a great way to take your current audience and keep them engaged. So like, say you have a membership. It's a great way to add additional, sorry, my kid's walking behind me.
Hey, I'll have COVID. It too. That's a cute kid.
Thank you. So it's a great way to keep your audience engaged. Everybody who I've bought from, I continue to listen to their podcast. So I always feel like I'm getting more content from them and always building that relationship with them. So it just continues down that line of building the raving fans, as people like to call them online, those people who will buy anything from you, no matter what you put out. They're there for it because they trust you, they know you, they like you. Yeah,
and they have that connection with you. And what I found is, no connection, no purchase.
Yep, correct.
Yep. And most of the time it has to be earned. Particularly, there are that. What is it? When in a launch, it's like 3 to 7% of the people that watch, in a highly successful launch, buy, right? Buy the whatever they're selling. And then the rest of them, it's at a very small percentage, and they consider that a very successful, and people make millions of dollars doing that. But the rest of us, my personality, is like sitting back, waiting. You're going to have to earn this with me. I'm going to have to see how consistent that you are. And are you really knowledgeable? And then I love what you just said as far as know, like, and trust. I've got to know them. And then if the chemistry's right, if we're connecting, right? Which isn't everybody, and it doesn't have to be everybody.
Right. Yeah. It really narrows down, for people, like, if your teaching style is what they are interested in, or your talking style, it just lets people know what they're going to get. So it just makes it easier for them to make that purchase.
Yeah. Well, you brought up an interesting point right there. One thing I've noticed too, whenever I have purchased, after our launch is that they're teaching. I'll take Stu McLaren, for example. I joined his membership program. It's $2,000. Never spent that much on a 10-week education program. The launch was full, and he's zany, Stu. He's zany and he's out there and he's doing wacky things. Which with my melancholy personality style, it kind of gets on my nerves after a while. I'm going to have handled so much cheerleading.
Right.
let's get away from the fluff and show me the content. They give me the 15 steps for accomplishing this or whatever. But then when you get into his program, now those 15 steps are there, and his he has his videos, his content, are very directive. They're concise. They're almost the opposite of what you experience whenever you're doing like a 5, 7, 10-day challenge where they're on air for, hours and hours at a time. And so I see, so again, this is another vote for earning somebody's relationship and connection over a longer period of time. I felt like, I was relieved when I got into Tribe and saw that the content was, concise and good and wasn't fluffy. But it was almost in a deceiving, or I didn't really get to see what I wanted during, these quick launches. So
yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, good. So, Caleigh, there's people that follow me that will, watch this, potentially later, weeks, months in the future, who are like, yeah, I have been thinking about podcasting. Hey, Tamara. Hey, Zach. Good to see you guys. And I've heard about podcasting. People that podcast look really professional, and they're intimidating to me. I don't know. They might say, and yet I want to be like the visual aid for this. Is that you don't have to be very, not real professional or not real, on it, or do a really great job. And if someone's counting my ums right now, you're probably in double digits. So so when you work with people, are you working with people that are, really professional, or do you start with beginners, or what do you do?
So here's the interesting thing about podcasting is you perceive people who have a podcast as professionals and as experts. That doesn't necessarily mean that that's true. A lot of these people are in GarageBand on their Mac editing themselves. But the fact that it's almost like being an author of a book. The fact that you have a podcast makes you seem so professional because you're putting out consistent content. You are confident in what you're saying. You have something to say to people, and you know that they need to listen to it. So it just exudes this confidence and this expert level factor that it makes you perceive people that way. It doesn't necessarily mean that they are professional or that they, do have this whole team backing them to launch this podcast.
Yeah.
They don't delete all of their ums. I mean, when I go through and edit podcasts, ums make it through. It's just, it's the way people talk. There's nothing wrong with that.
A little bit more humanizing, isn't it?
But yeah, right.
That's good. And I could speak into that because about 9 years ago, I wrote a book, right? And so now I'm a book author, and it was for how to use art. It was written for counselors, how to use art in groups where they're using it with them, right? And I'm not an art therapist. I'm not a licensed art therapist. And so I put it up on Amazon. So, and an art therapist had a problem with that. But anyway, that had opened the door. It's got to be more than 10 years from now for me to be able to, I got invited to speak. I've spoken at like about 10 different conferences. Why? Because I'm an author of this book. I'm like, 8 people have bought the book. I am not that big of a, but it does give you that authority. And I do think that podcasting has a very similar, maybe even superior, way of helping people see you as an authority on your topic, right?
Yeah. Right. Good. Yeah, it definitely does.
Neat. So let's say that, so you help people. So let's say that you helped me start a podcast. What would we do? What would we do together?
So the first thing that I have my clients do, and it's depending on like what package you work with, like is the percentage of like I would be doing it versus you would be doing it. But I typically have them rough draft a show description because you have to work from the description. You have to know where you're going before you start to produce the content. So I usually have them rough draft the show description. We kind of work from there. I'll go through and edit it. And we really decide like what the mission is, what the episodes are going to be about, if they're going to do interview episodes, solo episodes, a combo, the general length that they want their episodes to be. And then in order to launch, you need to record 2 to 3 episodes. The first episode is always going to be like a welcome to my podcast episode. Welcome, this is who I am, this is what I do, this is the kind of content I'm going to provide. And then the second and third episode are samples of what you're going to do. So like say you're going to do interviews and solos. You'll have 1 interview episode, 1 solo episode. And all of those episodes will launch together. So you'll upload them all at the same time. That way when somebody comes, like, you blast it out on social media, tell everybody I have a podcast now, come listen to it. There will be enough content there for them to listen to and start getting hooked on it.
Oh, I see. Okay, so you kind of front load it or put
right.
Okay, you put it up there. And as you're talking, a friend of mine, Sarah Thurman, who has a mentoring program for artists, and I was kind of in weekly contact with her when she was starting her podcast, and that's exactly what she did. That was, she I didn't really catch it at the time, but she had 4 already in the bank, in the can, whatever. And she launched it. So that's interesting. Yeah, I didn't even think about it at the time, but that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, it's kind of like when you start a Facebook page or a Facebook group, you always upload content first so that when people get there, they have something to look at, You're not inviting people to an empty Facebook group. So.
Yeah. I have been before. I didn't like it.
I know, right, exactly. So you have to have something there for people to see, when they go to log on. So
wow. So you can really help people get started and understand that there is kind of a science to this. There's
right.
a structure in which to do this, right? And then one thing that's always confused me, even as just a listener of podcasts, is there's so many places that you can listen to it on. So how does that work even?
Yeah. So when you first launch, there's you have to submit to all the platforms that you want it to be listed on. So that's like a whole process. All of them have different processes. Apple, you have to log into iTunes and do it. So there's different formats to go through with that. But once you launch, you can use like Buzzsprout or Libsyn and their hosting sites. So they will host your podcast, and that's kind of where your podcast lives. So then after that, you just upload to Libsyn and it blasts the episodes out. You schedule it to go out and it just goes on, whatever morning you want it to release that. And it's just out there on all the platforms that you selected and you submitted to.
That's really great. And I'm thinking again about my own experience because Matt Tommy interviewed me again on his podcast about 2 months ago, and it's not scheduled to release until the middle of October. Yeah. And so he does batching, which I think is really smart. Yeah. As it kind of sets aside like 2 days, in a month or whatever, just to do a bunch of, he has them all set up for people to interview. So now, what is the difference between a podcast and is it a vlog? Where you have almost like what we're doing now, where you have what is that called whenever you can see people? Is there a term for that?
I mean, it would be a vlog or a YouTube show and really like the kind of like we talked about before, the benefit of a podcast over that is that you can, multitask while you're doing it. There's no like having to watch it. So, and it's also easier access. So like, if you have an iPhone, you subscribe to your podcast. Every time they drop a new episode, it pops up and tells you. You just click it on your phone and hit play.
Okay, so that doesn't happen like with what we're doing right now or what on YouTube. Yeah, I'm starting to see some of the advantages there. So that's an automated process that alerts people that you have a entry, that you have just, okay.
Yep.
Well, that's pretty cool. And people have to subscribe in order to do that.
Yes, yeah, but it's, it's super simple. And my clients always, at the end of their episodes say, don't forget to subscribe and leave a review. And they, hit the subscribe button, and that's, it's not like a long process or anything. It's just one little button click.
Yeah. Well, didn't YouTube used to notify you with people that you subscribe to? I think they've just gotten so big. I don't get any it doesn't work that way.
Right. And it's not, it's not the same as a podcast. Most people don't have the YouTube app on their phone. They're not subscribing. They're going to search for something specific when they need it. Yeah. Not necessarily tuning in every week.
Yeah. Now, what is your thoughts on, I know that there's, let's see, what's it called? Repurpose IO. I don't know if you've heard of them before, but I know that some of people I'm connected with use them, and it basically takes a podcast and then it can automatically, like you said, it goes everywhere. But one of those places is some of the video platforms like YouTube. You don't get to see anything. It just shows you like a still or maybe like a sound wave or something going across there. Are you familiar with that?
Yeah. So what I do for my clients is we do audiograms, and it's like a 30-second to a minute snippet with a video, where you just have like your logo and you're playing the information. The benefits of that like are kind of up in the air. Content.
I think that we're losing connection. Okay, you just came back, but would you mind repeating that? You said that. The
That makes sense.
okay, you're telling me the benefits of that, and then you went slow motion, like. So the benefits of that are you with me, Caleigh? Are you there? Can you hear me, Caleigh? Okay, you're back. Okay. All right, you had been you were frozen for a second there. So, can you hear me? Can you hear me, Caleigh? Well, guys, it could be on my side since she can't hear me. So, can you see me? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I
Caleigh, I'm
can
gonna
see you now.
Okay, great. I lost you a little bit. You're talking about the video. You do a little logo clip, and then that's when I lost you. I don't know if I dropped or you dropped,
Okay.
but could you go back to that
Yeah.
little snippet
Yeah.
with a logo? Yeah.
Right. So yeah. So I do like a social media post that it's called an audiogram, and it has a sound wave at the bottom, a caption, and it kind of just helps promote through social with a video because we all know social prefers video. As far as uploading the podcast onto YouTube with like just a picture of you or a logo or something, you definitely can do that. Most of my clients don't, either because they are posting different things on their YouTube and they
Yeah.
prefer people to go listen to it as a podcast.
Yeah, I see. Pretty cool. So what have you seen people wrap podcasts around? What kind of topics? What kind of themes do you share with that?
So I have several different clients in varying niches. I have a client who talks about human design. I've had a client talk about childcare and being a director of a childcare center, health and fitness, business, entrepreneurship, affiliate marketing. I mean, there's all kinds of different topics. Basically, if you can post it online, if you're posting online about it, you can podcast about it.
Wow. That's interesting. Now, is a podcast like, is it always like a weekly commitment to, that seems intimidating, I think, to a lot of people is, oh my gosh, every Tuesday
Right.
I've got to,
Yeah.
or can you do podcasts less often? Or is creating that content, is it really just not as intimidating as we all think it is?
Yeah. So they definitely perform better if you are releasing weekly episodes.
Weekly.
Just because people become loyal to you, they look forward to it. You're building up that relationship. That's where batching episodes really comes into play. So like a lot of my clients will sit down for 2 or 3 days and batch their episodes for the next 3 months all at one time, and then drop them and send them to me, and I'll edit them and put them out. That becomes more of an issue if you're doing it all yourself, because it takes 2 to 3 times the length of an episode to edit it. So if you're recording an hour-long episode, for most of my clients, it's super easy. They love talking about their business. They love interviewing people. So it's, they're just having a 1 hour, 30-minute, however long their episodes are, conversation. And that's, low impact for them. If you're editing all yourself, then that's where it kind of, can become draining and exhausting.
I believe it. Yeah. So let's say that I have some people watching that are, some of my membership is people that are teaching fluid art, or they're teaching other types of creative classes, right? So not art. When I say art teacher, people think of school, not school, not kids, but mostly adults at art centers and other places, sip and pour classes, those kind of things. What do you think would be the benefit for them to ramp up to be able to do a podcast? What should they expect as far as results?
Yeah, so there's all kinds of content that they can, talk about. You probably know better than I do, but then there's also, doing interviews. And so when you interview somebody, they're going to share that onto their page. So it's almost like sharing an audience, working together to build your audience. So if you have people that you're interviewing who aren't competition, but they have the same ideal customer as you, then you're going to build your audience that way and build their audience too. So it's a win-win for everybody.
Wow, that's great. And so those, what I would call a joint venture partnership, right, is that they're
Mm-hmm.
not becoming business partners, but they're partnering on this project. And so if someone's doing local classes, let's, say in Tampa, Florida, then they could find people that do other things. Maybe they don't do
Yeah.
the same style, and they could interview them. And now they're sharing with their tribe, their followers, and so you're getting access to these people.
Yeah.
And so, what is a good way to, in those cases, so they get to see you, but do you encourage people to have some kind of action step that they can do to I don't know, to capture those leads?
Yeah. So you always want to have a call to action at the end of your podcast and in your show notes. So you're always going to have, check us out on Facebook, go like our page, leave a review. If you're running like some kind of discount, you can link that up. You can have them join your email list. There's all kinds of, different call to actions that you can have, similar to, what you would put on a Facebook post or a Facebook ad.
Mm.
So there's, all kinds of different ways, but you always want to give them an action to take. Like, if you like our content, here's how you can be more involved.
Wow. And that seems to be like a great segue for what we've arranged, right?
Yeah.
Because Caleigh has this really great handout for you guys. And so I've already posted it into the link, and I'll make sure that I put all your contact information, like you just said, and the link to go to your website. And so, Caleigh, if they go to your website and they click that link, then you're able to give them something. What are you going to give the listeners?
Yeah. So you all will get the 8 ways that podcasting will change your business.
Ooh,
So
8 ways that podcasting will change your business.
Right. Yep.
Cool.
So yeah, it'll walk you through, all of, kind of some of the stuff we talked about today, and go into more depth about, how podcasting can help you grow and expand your followers and, build a trust factor with them, and why podcasting has boomed over the last, several years.
Oh, that's great. And I've read it. Okay, guys. And I can tell you it's not a heavy read. So you don't feel like, oh my gosh, that's the last thing I need to do is, I don't need to take on some 12-page document right now.
Right.
But but instead it's, she's done a really good job of doing some kind of bullet point statements here, and for you to consider, because right now I'm, for where I'm at right now is just, do I even want to do this? Do I need to spend my time, energy, and resources doing podcasting? Caleigh's done a really great job with this little handout to be able to highlight to you, this is how it could be a good fit, for your business. Are you aware of people that do podcasting and they have no business or income associated with it? They're just doing it because of, I don't know, hobby, interest?
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of people who do it just as a hobby. There's also, like, if you are worried about not making enough money from it, there's always ads or sponsorships. So like if you're talking about somebody local, they can run ads for other local businesses on their podcast, similar to what you do on radio.
I'll be darned. So I didn't think about that.
You can have people pay for guest spots.
Neat. And so that would work they've built a following, and maybe their business is just local, like we'll go back to Tampa, so any business in Tampa that would have a similar client avatar would be interested in paying for an ad.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that makes sense. Because when I think about podcasting, I'm thinking about the world,
right?
and there's people all over the world that can listen to it, but there are people that have, like maybe just people that are teaching, art classes in their local area. They don't really care if someone in Australia listens to their podcast or not. It's not necessarily benefiting them, but building that local following, you could also make money from doing local ads. Hadn't thought about that. Yeah, that's pretty cool. Good. Well, Caleigh, this has been really fun, and I love the parade behind you.
I know.
A little blonde hair bopping.
Yeah.
Any last statements you'd like to make to the listener?
Just, if you are thinking about starting a podcast, I just want you to imagine yourself being a podcaster and how that would change your business. Ooh. And compare your, we'll use Jim. So like, say you are, you and you have your business and a podcast, and Jim doesn't have a podcast, and there's a buyer in the middle. Who are you going to pick? Are you going to pick the person you can build a relationship with? Or are you going to pick the person that you have to go searching for their content and can't build a relationship with. So
that's good. Even if they have content out there,
right. You have
search,
to, right. You have to search for it. It's not always easy to find. It's not always consistent. So yeah, just, think about that when you're thinking about creating a podcast. And podcasting doesn't have to be this big cumbersome thing. It can be simple. You don't have to start off with a fancy mic and paying a podcast editor. You can start off with, some Apple headphones and just record it on your, your laptop or your phone and upload it. It doesn't have to be, a huge, costly ordeal that's going to take a ton of your time.
That's brilliant. Love it. Yeah. And that's exactly how I started doing interviews like this.
Yeah.
And, using StreamYard, I don't edit anything. So it just goes out raw. And they, and they have a free opportunity that I used for like the first year. And so you really can shoestring this and get started. Once you build up where you need support, then it's probably time to call Caleigh and say, hey, help me out. This has become this thing, which would be great. Great success. Great. All right, Caleigh, thanks so much for coming on and sharing with the listeners here. And everybody, remember, I put the link in twice into the chat room or chat thread, whatever you call it. And I'll put it into everywhere that this is going so that you guys can click on that parade and squirrel. And you can go find out a little bit more about Caleigh. Okay. I think it would be worth it just to go on there and read the handout that she has for you. And that would help you to answer some of your probably your top 10 questions. Yep. All right, Caleigh, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks so much for having me on. It was fun.
Good. It was fun. Bye-bye.
Bye.